Welcome to the In Shape Fitness Show. I'm Coach Kim. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's podcast is called Sideways Interactions, Help You Move Forward. Lots of people spend all of their workout time. If they spend any time working out, they do spend a lot of their time, in fact, most of it, in exercises that move you in one plane of motion. It is called the sagittal plane, and it is the forward motion, and running, biking, swimming, all of that bodily movement is forward and back, basically, right? So it's moving a step forward. Most people don't walk backwards, or walking backwards, I guess, or something. I like to have people run backwards when we train for long distance running. But sideways interactions are really interesting. And I got into a conversation just today with a client who's really fit, but where at the end of the winter in particular, after we begin to go outside, we start running a little bit in Central Park. I, work in New York City, and my training clients are in Central Park, the area around mostly Upper West and Upper East Side. And we end up outside running a little bit more. And what ends up happening over that fatigue period when you are in an activity that involves the forward motion, your body will fatigue. And what happens with the fatigue is that the smaller support muscles fatigue first. You have a secondary sort of level of an issue with respect to the fact that one side of your body is stronger than the other. And that's why just last week, we did a podcast about pivoting, which is the concept that my company, my team uses to try and isolate the body, the sides of the body, to make sure that you develop some balance, particularly between the right leg and the left leg when you're doing things like running, biking, hiking, etc. But the lateral movements are, since they're not a part of most exercise regimens, they do tend to mean that the smaller muscles on the side of the body are weaker, and they are tighter by virtue of the stagnant sort of existence that we live outside of maybe doing a workout session a couple times a week. Now, what does that mean? Lateral movements can be lots of different things. There are rotational movements, there are side-to-side movements, positions that are based in yoga and Pilates, like side planks, and various stretches that help perform some pull of the soft tissues interacting with the twist of the body or the movement to the side of the body are all really helpful. Before we get into what those exercises are, I want to talk a little bit about why it's beneficial, a little more about why it's beneficial. But I actually want to start out with a story that I wrote about in my book, Darwin on the Treadmill, because I do find this really fascinating that as a society, as a civilization, humans for so many years were physically active in lots of different ways typically. Now, nobles and maybe high-born royals would have potentially done very little physically to work. But the majority of the human beings did have to do things physically, whether it was training for battle, to gardening, to making sure that you planted and harvested your food, to cleaning, and various things related to being a parent. I'm a parent. Since I'm an entrepreneur and I live in a really expensive city, I'm a working parent, but I am also a very hands-on mom, and have actually realized when I had my child that it really was the commitment to doing things one-on-one with my child was a lot of activity, physical movement activity that I was not used to as a person that did run a couple of marathons before my daughter was born and was fit, but wasn't really, I was, imbalanced in the way that a lot of people are. But I did write a story that I want to tell you, not about myself. I don't really like talking about myself all that much, but I want to tell you a story about a time period after World War II in the United States, when things were really starting to change very quickly. And you probably know this. I know I've talked about this a lot. Our entire fitness world has changed so quickly. Lots of things in our society in the United States have changed a lot. But as far as exercise goes, we really did. The Industrial Revolution and the technological revolution have changed the way that we live our lives. And it has only been in these last few decades that we have started to gain as much weight as we have, that we've relied so much on pain medications and on, how shall we say, willful exercise, gym-based and training-based exercise to sustain our physical selves. Before that, we didn't. It was part of our lifestyles. But after World War II, immigrants of Asian descent, so now I'm actually starting the story, lived mostly in urban areas, mostly on the northern coast of California and, of course, in New York. In San Francisco in the 1940s was bustling. It was a bustling Asian community. By the end of the war, tens of thousands of immigrants and their children resided in the Bay Area. The influence of this wave, one of several waves of Asian immigrants, could be seen, in fact, in their food, developing culture, the food, their schools, and of course in entertainment. The opera was one source of popular entertainment, and it was around this time that a Cantonese opera singer and his wife traveled to the Bay Area on a U.S. tour and then remained there because they started a family. They had a son. Now, young Fan was taken back to Hong Kong and spent most of his childhood in his parents' homeland. And this was because his mother's family was pretty important in local business. Jun Fan and his parents and siblings grew up in relative affluence in Hong Kong. And he was a child actor, actually, and appeared in 20 Chinese films before his teenage years. Maybe some of you already know who I'm talking about, but just keep listening in because it is quite interesting. At least it was to me when I was doing research about this, because I wanted to find someone to tell a story about in this chapter of my book about sideways interactions that was a little more than a historical figure that was fit, because this person really just sort of redefined health for many people. You'll know why I picked this story in a minute. So anyway, so back to the story. Hong Kong, however, was pretty crowded. It was a neighborhood the neighborhoods were extremely crowded. Some of them, at least, also were very dangerous. And sometime around the age of 13 or 14, Jun Fan's parents decided that he needed to learn how to defend himself. So he was starting to learn martial arts in order to fend off bullies who were taunting him. He was scrawny. Now, his father taught him some basics of Tai Chi. And when I was writing this story, reading and then writing the story, I imagined this famous male opera singer and the affluent family in which this young family was living, an artful and peaceful person, probably with a son that was pubescent, lanky, a teenage son that was being bullied by the rabble-rousing young men in these Hong Kong neighborhoods. The dad probably selected Tai Chi, the family selected Tai Chi, because of the graceful, controlled approach to the strength of the human body. And I am always really fascinated when I watch, sometimes I go, and you can go see this in Central Park, Asian families, Asian adults mostly. I never see kids involved in Tai Chi, but watching them, it's really beautiful. Anyway, so his this did not work. So young Jun Fan was worried about getting his butt whipped by Hong Kong street gangs that were absolutely not taking Tai Chi. That was more like, the ultimate street fighting kind of approach. But his dad's approach was, kind of like Mr. Brady, getting you to spar with an opponent in a big fighting competition. And they don't play by the same rules. Yun Fan's training was inadequate and disproportional. But by the age of 16, he had gone out on his own for his training. Now, undoubtedly, the concerned father was not pleased to see where this was going, because Jun Fan was discovering something called Wing Chun, a form of Kung Fu. He trained under a famed Wing Chun guru, a man named Yip Man, who taught discipline and order to his pupils. He urged students to organize their fighting around competitions in order to curb street fighting from the neighborhoods. And apparently Jun Fan was oriented really well to this discipline. But there was a problem. Jun Fan was not of pure Asian blood. Wing Chun was not supposed to be shared with a boy with foreign blood, white colonial blood. And Jun Fan's mother was half white, half of European descent. So he was banned from formal practice. As the turn of events would have it, this led to more street fighting, and the hurdles took their toll on the family. So by the time Jun Fan was in his late teens, he returned to the United States so that he would be safe. So now he's back in the San Francisco area, back in the Bay Area. And when he started his life anew on the Pacific coast around the age of 18, Jun Fan did not speak English. He did not have a high school diploma. He took work in a restaurant, focused his mind on his education. He didn't want to continue with acting, but he did continue his work in the art of Wing Chun in the San Francisco Bay Area. So he actually was able to open a school. A second Jun Fan Kung Fu, he called it Kung Fu, studio opened soon thereafter, but it really wasn't until after he personally sustained an injury due to training that he realized how certain elements of conditioning of his own body were not sufficient for what he wanted to do. So his journey of recovery and reflection led to the formation of his own modality of martial arts, something that he named Jeet Kune Do, or the way of the intercepting fist. Now you must know who I'm talking about. There's the success of his own physical truths and his studios and his showmanship that ended up finding himself back in front of the camera, but this time known as Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee would have made an amazing model for urban young people. He learned that this delicate balance exists within the body and the body's need for energy. And he did it by perfecting, learning different developments, different components of martial arts training, and also his own life circumstances to develop the skills that he needed to perfect his own conditioning and the conditioning of his discipline. Moving from side to side and rotating the body are seldom performed in a day's time by the majority of Americans, adults and kids. Now, there are kids, I'll watch my fourth grader in the playground. It's really kind of fun and exciting and amazing to see the different things that they do with their bodies when they are still really young and really limber and really active and excited. But they do trail behind adults. Most kids, with the diminishing role that multidimensional physical activity has in a typical day, school day or weekend day, This isn't breaking news. People know this. Machines perform more of our tasks, and we sit most of the day. And here's the thing too, as devoted as I am to these, this sort of fully functional, multidimensional movement in my own day and in that of my kid's life, she's in New York City public schools. And guess what? They go to gym once a week. Once a week. That's it. They have recess, but it's only for a short period of time, 15 to 20 minutes after lunch. So it's an insufficient level of activity. So we try to get her out of doors and into the sunshine, playing on the playground whenever we possibly can. But here's the deal: caretakers of young children who choose more direct involvement in the care of their child or their children are the closest that the typical westernized middle-class adult gets to the kind of multidimensional movement that could be exemplified in something like martial artistry and that which Bruce Lee developed. Parents must often opt for outside assistance when it comes to the care of kids and the care of their households. And why is that? It's because we work. Both parents work. Now, both parents probably try to go to the gym if they're conscious of this issue. We are all tired all of the time. But when the mechanics are distilled down to the basic patterns of movement, dashing from one side of the room to the next, twisting around to prevent a minor household disaster, reaching for something far away in the corner of a room while trying to maintain a position in the middle of the room when you're holding your child or holding a pet. These are the movements that probably only parents can appreciate. That is, unless you might play, a game of Twister here and there. So many of our movement patterns are streamlined now. Not necessarily for the better. For the majority of those who surpass the demands of working labor only to suffer the consequences of the lack of labor in our lives. Maybe evolution for human beings was headed this way all along, but the impact that physical inactivity has on the quality of our lives continues to plague our species, especially here in the United States, when we are so committed to getting ahead, to doing more, that we spend most of our day typing away on a computer, typing away on a device, and trying to either answer the next email or write the next paper or do the next thing that will make a difference for our lives and that of our families. But forward movement, the other thing I want to talk about really quickly here is that forward movement feels good. Forward movement, even if you're on a treadmill, it feels like you're going somewhere. You're logging some miles, even if it's just in that hamster wheel-like setting. But whether it's walking or running or biking or swimming, as I said before, the most prevalent choices for fitness in a modern civilization, the thing that you have to remember is that there are muscles on the side of your body that provide support and foster stability. So let's talk a little bit about some of those exercises. Now, if you haven't done a postural systems check, it's what I typically do at the very beginning of these podcasts, if for no other reason than to get you to sit up straight as you're listening or to stand up straight as you're standing, to take a couple of deep breaths. And we always inhale through the nose and then bellow the air out of the mouth. So you smell the fresh air, hopefully, coming in through your nose and filter all that great oxygenated air into your body, which helps your body maintain its calm, controlled place physiologically, so as far as hormone excretion and your heart rate. And then you bellow the carbon dioxide in your air out, the external respiration part of the process gets carbon dioxide out of your body. That's really important, and you can bellow that air out of your body. The contractions of your diaphragm and the movement of your lungs is metabolic. So taking this time to breathe deeply is a metabolic boost that you can count on every day, even if you can't make it to the gym, even if you're sitting here listening to me talk about the gym. All right, now let's just take a couple of seconds to think about the body parts that you want to make sure are in line. And I'm going to have you do one exercise that I almost always do as part of the warm up of a routine. And it really has a lot more to do with balance. But this is where balance and sideways interactions intersect a little bit, because the lighthouse, which is where you stand up really tall, you're going to pull in your belly button, contract your tummy muscles, and make sure that your pelvis is straight. So you tuck in your tailbone a little bit, which makes sure that you don't have a condition known as lordosis, or mitigates lordosis, where you stick your butt out, because that contracts the muscles of your lower back, pulls on your hip flexors. So you tuck in your tailbone, pull in your tummy muscles, and then stand up really tall and push your shoulders back so that your ears and your shoulders line up vertically. Take 3 more deep breaths here. And as you're breathing, you want to extend your arms out to the sides, and you want your palms to face down. You can turn them up for a second and then turn them down. Turn them up, turn them down. A little rotation with that rotator cuff, as long as you have the physical check, the physical thumbs up from your medical professionals that you don't have any joint issues. Couple of rotations of your shoulder are really, really healthy, because we do not move the upper body enough. Now, the lighthouse is a move where you position your feet heel to toe or close to heel to toe. Your arms are out to the sides. You're standing up real tall. And then the head turns all the way to the right slowly and all the way to the left slowly. What's happening here? You might feel a little off balance, and you should. That's why we do this exercise. The reason that the lighthouse makes you feel off balance is because it activates the equilibrium of your inner ear. It discombobulates it, actually. And so your ancillary muscles, the support muscles that line your feet, up the sides of your legs, up the sides of your pelvis, and through the side of your rib cage. Those muscles bolster your support. You should feel even a little bit of additional heat potentially rising in your feet, because you are off balance. Your body is seeking more stability and therefore activating those small muscles. This seems like such a small exercise. It doesn't even feel like exercise. In fact, that's one of the biggest sort of, I guess, the biggest joke of the entire fitness industry is that you need to be busting your butt, sweating your butt off, sweating bullets in order to have the level of metabolic boost that will keep the quality of your life high and mitigate any pain and suffering that you might feel as you get older. You can switch your feet, and you want to make sure that each foot has a turn in the rear, each foot has a turn in the front, because you're going to feel slightly different when your left foot is in the back versus your right foot. But that's the lighthouse. And that's a really minimal way to activate the side of the body. The thing that I really love doing with respect to sideways movements, there's a move I call, it's an archer's lunge. And it's not really a lunge, because the only thing that you're really doing is turning. So if you're standing up and facing in one direction, you're going to turn to the right 90 degrees. You understand that, right? That's from staring straight ahead to turning your body to the right 1/4 of the way, turning to the side. And the way that you do that is by picking up the right foot, stepping out, and turning the whole body. Your left foot does not move. It stays facing forward. But the right foot ends up pointing to the right. And maybe away from the body, about double shoulder width apart. And then you can bend the right knee slightly, as though you were an archer about to pull back on your bow and aim an arrow to the right, to someone to the right. And then return to the starting position with both feet facing forward. And then you can do the same thing to the left. So you move the whole body. You're not rotating at your waist. You're moving the entire body. And you do it in both equal number in both directions. That we call an archer's lunge. Now, if you have a bow and arrow, add that in and pull back on the arrow if you're turning to the right, you pull back with the left hand. If you're turning to the left, you'd be pulling back with the right hand. So sometimes I actually have people hold resistance bands and pull back, pretend as though they're holding a bow and arrow. That activates the muscles in your chest, your lats, your upper back, maintains a little bit of that rotator cuff pull, the strength that you need in your deltoid and in the upper part of your lats. So that's the archer's lunge. I really love that position or that exercise. The other thing that you can do is an actual lateral lunge. And what you would do with a lateral lunge is you don't turn, but you take a big step out to the right with both feet continuing to point forward. You bend the right knee, kind of stick your butt out a little bit as you sit down into the right butt cheek. You'll feel the inner thigh of the left leg stretching out, and then you return to the starting position. And then, of course, we're now intersecting with the podcast that I just did last week called Pivoting. This is a pivoting exercise as well because it isolates the right leg relative to the left leg work. So you have to make sure that you do an equal number with both sides in both directions. Now, a second variation that does include a little bit of rotation through your rib cage would be to take the right foot, perform that right lunge, and as you're in the lunge, sitting into your right butt cheek, twist the left side of the body rather. Your left arm is going to cross the chest to the right, and it's like pretend like you're pushing someone away from you, pushing a ball or pushing a door, pushing something from your chest at the chest level, and then return to your starting position. And again, do the same number on both sides. So a side plank is another thing that you can do. Something I highly recommend that you add in with any side plank or rather plank exercise regimen. Spend 30 seconds in your regular plank facing the floor, and then spend 20 seconds or 15 seconds on each side as well. Really, really helpful. You want the side muscles to be really strong to support your body. Again, why do we care about the side of the body, the rotation of the body, interacting with the sides of where your body is, interacting with that dimension of your body's space will bolster the support that your body needs to keep moving forward. I'm Coach Kim from In Shape Fitness. Please let me know if you have any questions about this or any of our podcasts or workouts, and I will see you again soon.